You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
2 more months till golden shower. TRRS Parenti.
Two. Check. And a half-hearted dance there I was doing. Half-hearted dance. We need a gift for the dance, so maybe, I've been talking about this possible... I gotta make a 20 gift sub alert. I've been Montreal pilled after my 2-day stay. Good. Wonderful city. One of the finest cities in the entire world. More and more people are discovering this. Chin chin, everybody. Oh, that's good. That's refreshing. Sorry, I'm late again. I'm sorry. I'm late again. I've been talking a lot of shit about starting the stream at, 11:30. I think the main thing I settled on was 12 at the latest. 12 at the latest. And I will get there, okay? I'm going to get there. Like I said, I've been having a hard time lately just doing everything that I need to do. Can we just go back to the regular time? Well, I mean, I think 12 is supposed to be the regular time. So I think ideally I should just be starting at 12. Right? And that's at 12. I think I need to be consistent with that. Did something really stupid today, actually. Which is... So I knew I had a therapy appointment coming up. And last night, I checked. I was like, I know that's coming up this week. I just need to confirm. So I checked on my phone last night, checked in my emails. And it was like, oh, good. Okay, so that's tomorrow. That's tomorrow, October 4th. Because I looked at my phone. I was like, what's the date today? October 3rd? October 4th. Okay, that's tomorrow morning. Good thing I checked. So then I got up today. I got my kid ready for school. I was in kind of a hurry. Got my kid ready for school. Was, getting all that ready. I went and dropped him off. And I got back just in time. I timed it just perfectly. I got back just in time as I saw the bus coming along that I needed to take. because I was in my car, but I took the bus downtown because it's way easier and faster to do that than to try and find parking, which is just miserable. So I parked my car. I see the bus coming down the road. I had to jog just a little bit to make sure I caught it. Caught the bus as soon as it passed. Got on the metro. The deep state doesn't want you to know, but the date changes at midnight. This is what got me. This is what got me. Got the metro. Showed up at my appointment right on time. Like literally, I opened the door 9:59 a.m. Like just as it's clicking over to 10. Could not have timed it more perfectly. And then I was sitting there for a moment, and it was like usually you don't have to really wait. And I was like, okay. And I looked at my phone one more time, and I did in fact realize that last night when I checked this out, it was like midnight. It was like it had just turned midnight, and I didn't realize. So it was actually tomorrow, not tomorrow this morning. So I went all the way there, and as soon as I realized, I was like, oh, good. I love that. You know those moments when it's like, that you realize that, and what are you going to do? You can't throw a big tantrum. There's nothing you can do. You can't go, oh, can we actually do it today? That's not how it works. That's not how a schedule works. So I just turned and left. Just turned and walked right back out the door, got right back on the metro, right back on the bus. Yeah, it's sad face. That's right. So I just, basically lost an hour of my morning, and then I had to get home. I had to edit the Insurgents podcast, and I had to take a moment to decompress after I got back. I couldn't just jump right into like going crazy doing stuff. So I had to sit down. I had an iced coffee. I watched the episode of Columbo that I fell asleep watching last night. By the way, Magyar guy, thanks for the 10 months of tier 1. 10 months of tier 1 from Magyar guy. Thank you for that. I got to say also thank you to Unselfish Chatter and community member 10,000 Sandwiches. 34 months resub at tier 2 yesterday when the stream wasn't even going on. The stream wasn't even on. 10,000 Sandwiches doesn't want the accolades. Doesn't want the thank you. Doesn't want the credit. But thank you for that 10,000 Sandwiches if you're watching. Anyway, no, I'm watching an episode of Columbo season 3. I was watching this episode last night when it's this like Senate candidate that murders his campaign manager. I was watching that last night and I fell asleep and I missed the ending. So I got back from like my completely pointless metro ride downtown, and I had an iced coffee and ate a pastry and watched this episode of Columbo, and then I had to edit the podcast, and now I'm here. That's what happened. That was my whole day. That was my whole day. And it's not even a practice run for tomorrow, because tomorrow I have a haircut scheduled in the morning. So now I just had to reschedule my whole appointment. So what can you do? I don't know. What can you do? I thought I had everything all scheduled and timed perfectly, and apparently not. This is a peek inside my bad brain. How my bad brain works. Men will literally do a Twitch stream and get a haircut instead of going to therapy. I mean, I am using a calendar. I try to use Google to like set appointments, but I didn't do it ahead of time with the therapy thing. It occurred to me last night, oh shit, that appointment's coming up. I got to check when that is. And then so I made the appointment last night on my calendar. I was like, what is it? October 4th. We're the 3rd right now. That's tomorrow morning. Good. And I put it right in the schedule. Right in the schedule. All for naught. Yeah, maybe I could have done that a couple weeks ago. Maybe I could have done that in August when that appointment was scheduled rather than the night before at 12:01 a.m. Maybe that would have been better to do. I don't know. We'll never know now, will we? I just got done with therapy. How'd that go, Hunger Games? Are you forgiving yourself yet? I hope so. I hope so. Sorry, I just took a shower. Just doing a little touch up there. This is why I gotta get a cut. My hair is just like outrageous now. The app for my hospital has an add to calendar feature, which is nice. That is nice. I mean, it's so easy. It's so you can literally talk to your phone. You know, the thing that's in your hand 12 hours a fucking day. You can literally just talk to it when you get an appointment, and it's scheduled and it's in your calendar, and you get a reminder and everything. Like it couldn't be easier. Like it couldn't be easier unless I had an actual human being here, like outlining my life for me, you know? It's so short, Sinchai. You're like the devil on my shoulder with this hair situation. Excuse me. Oh. Anyway, I'm here now. That's the most important thing. I'm going to be here for about 2 hours. I guess it's going to be a shorter episode because I was fucking screwed up my whole morning. But a lot of stuff to talk about. Yeah, nope. I think my therapist and I go over some of the same things because I can't let go. It do be like that, don't it? Yeah. No, I know the feeling. I like you getting this battle of wits with your therapist. Come on, you need to forgive yourself. And you're like, no, I'm not going to. I'm not going to. How about that? I'm going to forgive myself even less because you just said that. Because my goal is to win. Okay. My goal is to win this exchange here. Okay, it's a battle of wits. It's like a chess match. I will fucking hate myself. Okay, they're like, it's not your fault. I've done this bit before, but it's not your fault, Rob. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. And you're like, well, what about this thing that I just told you about? That's obviously super my fault. What about that though? What about that? That was obviously my fault. That thing that I just explained to you. Why would I forgive myself for that? I fucked it up. My therapist said they were proud of me. I've never been so pissed. Good. You can't let them get one over on you. That's the thing. It's psychological warfare, okay? And I'm going to come out on top. I'm going to come out on top. You're not going to tell me how to live my life, okay? I will tell you. How about that? I will tell you. It's the deep state trying to make me respect myself. Exactly. You know what? I think I actually might go hat mode here. One sec. It's super warm here in Montreal today. It's like we keep on going through this situation where we think it's like summer's finished and it's like into jacket weather, it's into hoodie weather, it's into colder weather, and it's super warm again. It's like 25 degrees today. 81 Fahrenheit for Dakadoon. Like, what the fuck? There we go. I'm looking forward to my haircut. I think I can do something with this. It's like when you You're bulking. You're collecting mass. Hoping we're just keeping the window open temps. Yeah, I mean, that's nice. That's nice. I don't know. It's like I was really actually liking it at night. You get those cold breezes. It was so hot just a few weeks ago that it starts to feel, when you feel those cold breezes at night, it feels like this little luxury. You know what I mean? Those are the worst nights when the heat just like doesn't stop and the whole evening is like that. You don't really get that. Yeah, it's nice to need the heavy blanket. I like that. I like the cool breeze and the blanket. That's the best way of relaxing at night. Ugh. Anyway, so I'm late getting started. I talked about it's still under 100. That's some good sleeping. It is. So, I was late getting started. I told you why, but there's lots to talk about. And I thought about just taking the day off. Like, there's been a couple times lately when I've just been like, maybe I can just not stream and then maybe I could catch up on some things. Because there's stuff I need to do. I got to clean. There's a bunch of things that I've been neglecting, kind of having to take care of. So it'd be good to have some time to do that. But I just get like, there's stuff to talk about. I'm beefing once again. I'm beefing with nemesis, frenemy, friend of the stream, TRRS peripheral character, John Cipher of the Central Intelligence Agency. This is the most bizarre thing about our future, with social media and everything. We've got these like CIA guys addicted to posting, and they can't help but like go on twitter.com or x.com, the everything app, and do like Nazi apologia. And then you can like actually talk to them. You can actually speak to these people. And because they're addicted to posting, they can't resist but responding. That's really the amazing thing, We can just go online and dunk on CIA guys. Yeah. Spooks are shitposting. They're NAFO fellas. They're posting memes. It's funny, and it's part of the illusion that we have of like our free speech or like freedom of expression that people point to. That shows that we live in this free society of free speech and free expression, because you can go and you can yell at journalists and you can yell at politicians, you can yell at CIA guys, but what they don't tell you afterwards is that doesn't actually impact anything. You can yell at the people, but like that's ultimately the same strategies continue for all of these people and all these institutions. It makes no actual impact. You can vote, you can go and vote for different parties. You can go write op-ed pieces in newspapers or get different sources of news, or you can go on social media and talk about these things, but like it doesn't actually do anything. It doesn't actually accomplish anything. It just makes you feel kind of a sense of catharsis. But it is very entertaining, though. It's very entertaining to be able to go and mix it up with, the elites, including people that are part of the Central Intelligence Agency. It used to be like, oh, is this guy a spook? Is this guy clandestine? Is he part of some 3-letter agency? We don't know. It's like in his bio. He's like, I'm with the CIA. All these weird CIA guys that are like dad, husband, father to a beautiful boxer named Betsy. Spearheaded the Operation Phoenix program in 1969. Like, it's fucking weird. It's really weird. So I'm going to take a look at my beef, someone who I've beefed with before. Excuse me. I'm going to take a look at my beef with John Cipher of the Central Intelligence Agency, because really it goes back to everything that we've been talking about lately: the revisionism, the Holocaust revisionism, the historical revisionism, the Red Scare propaganda. It's all coming back in a big way. and we've got the actual CIA engaged with that. We've got CIA agents being like sharing that Politico piece. Like, you need to have a nuance. There needs to be nuance about people that joined the SS.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
It's time. It's finally time for the Bun P. I mean gold color badge Nika E.
Thank you, B-Rat. Thank you, B-Rat, for 24 months, tier 1, and for all the support. I really appreciate that. B-Rat, enjoy your highly elite and highly exclusive shimmering golden 24-month, 2-year TRRS sub badge. Shimmering golden. As pointless as inconsequential as it is, it's 100 times cooler than beefing with another Twitch streamer. Yeah, maybe John Cypher will join Twitch eventually. You know, we don't know that he won't. Sometimes he posts in this very chat, John Cypher himself. You know? I think this title will tie together in with everything that we wanted to talk about today. Because there's other streamers that I think we need to, or other streamers and other individuals that are saying things that we also need to take issue with, that if they're not members of the Central Intelligence Agency, might as well be. So I'll try to just get started because I don't want to chit chat too much. I was late getting started, which I am sorry for. Hello, Danger Dave Ball. What's going on? Creating fake beef with his boss again. This is how we get you. It's the old good cop, bad cop routine. You know, that's how we get you. Okay. Close all that. Okay. Did you watch Wrestle Dream? I watched some of the highlights. Beefing with the CIA, and also not sponsored by arms manufacturers. This is how you know that you can trust me. Okay? This is why you know that I'm trustworthy Rob. Trustworthy Rob, they call me. Who calls you that? Many people. Many people, Nedlocked. Many people call me this. You're going to send me an exploding can of rain in the mail. Okay. Let's, okay, so there's a couple things. I wanted to go, this is kind of a continuation of what we were talking about yesterday. I wanted to talk about this exchange with John Cypher, and I also wanted to go a bit into this Tibet thing. We talked a little bit about it yesterday, but I wanted to get more into this Tibet business, which we were getting into yesterday. But this is really an absolutely incredible exchange, though, with John Cypher, and so revealing. And like, you got to wonder, like, if these people are trying to, if this is part of some op, or if these people are just genuinely not that impressive or intelligent people that can't stop themselves from posting and have their own brains like so twisted from not only being exposed to nonstop Western propaganda, but also have been part of that themselves. Like, who knows? Like, I almost don't want to believe that John Cipher is just this fucking dumb and naive, but perhaps it's possible. Like, I don't know. I genuinely don't know. Am I being psyoped somehow, made to believe something? Like, maybe, do we want to believe that the CIA just isn't aware of their own history, or that just have this kind of like completely clueless people like leading the organization, or is that just what they want us to believe? I don't know. Maybe there is an op. Maybe there is an op going on. Has he chimed in on Tibet? I'm sure if we look into it enough, I mean, he will have chimed into it on some point. They're going to swap out his 3 times hot round with 4 times. Oh man, that would be so spicy. But anyway, we looked at the tweet yesterday and my response yesterday, and we looked at this Politico piece, which is horrific. This is John Cipher sharing. I think a few people were confused and thought that he wrote the piece, which is not true. We did see some posts that the guy that wrote the piece did have yesterday, which were just unbelievable. But I mean, we looked at the Politico piece, which is, again, it's absolutely disgusting. It's Politico publishing Nazi propaganda. Like, there's just no other way of describing it. It's, at the very least, most generous interpretation, historical revisionism, and Nazi apologia. I would classify it as more just open, outright Nazi propaganda. Where they talk about this nuance. And this is my big takeaway from yesterday, the selective deployment of when we need to be nuanced about things. I think that's really fascinating. That's a fascinating way that this narrative is allowed to kind of progress. Oh, we need to be nuanced about people that joined the SS. First of all, we need to be nuanced about like people that were conscripted into the Wehrmacht or whatever. But we need to be nuanced about these SS divisions of these anti-Soviet nationalists and partisans. You know, we got to be nuanced. We got to understand that they were stuck between these two difficult situations that they make difficult choices, you know? That's when we got to be nuanced. When we're talking about the actual SS, people that were, they swore an allegiance to Hitler and carried out war crimes against civilians, like numerous documented, horrifying war crimes. That's when we got to be nuanced. But you know, it's like when we talk about the USSR, do we want to be nuanced about that? About the fact that the USSR isn't just this evil empire that just genocided and massacred and purged everybody and created nothing but misery, and it was this big, vast, authoritarian police state dystopia? Do we want to have nuance about that? Do we want to talk about the role that the USSR played in like defeating the Nazis and, you know, contributing so much to saving the whole world from this fascist threat? No, we don't want to be nuanced about that. We don't want to be nuanced about like the incredible accomplishments of lifting people out of poverty, lifting people out of serfdom, you know, raising living standards for millions of people, mass industrializing in this incredibly short time span. Any of these amazing, incredible accomplishments, can we be nuanced about that and acknowledge those good things while also saying, you know, that there was issues and there was problems and there was violence and other problems? Can we be nuanced about that? Well, no, you can't. You can only be nuanced about the fucking actual Nazis and the SS, but you can't be nuanced about Stalin or the USSR or Mao or anything like that. No. They killed hundreds of millions of people and it's just all bad and we can never be nuanced about it. You know? So that was my big takeaway from this like open piece of Nazi apologia in Politico, this selective deployment of when we need to be nuanced. I think that's really interesting, and who is making these claims and who we need to be nuanced about. People are starting to get defensive because they're actually into a lot of the individual elements of fascism, nationalism, individualism, capitalism, but they never had to wrestle with who the Nazis were, what they believed, or why it's so similar. Yeah, or people that are proud of the legacy of colonialism. Like, if for the people that are proud of like the Canada strong, America strong people, America first, that celebrate our genocide of indigenous peoples, or are proud of it, or are proud of colonization, they're so close ideologically to being Nazis. Like, it's almost like without it even a distinction. But yet, they wouldn't ever admit that. that would make them very uncomfortable to admit. But, you know, there's a lot of people out there like that. People that want to celebrate our heritage and people that want to downplay the legacy of colonialism and the violence of an ethnic cleansing that settled these continents, you know? Very, very little distinction, as we've talked about, with the role that, you know, settler colonialism played in, like, directly informing Nazi ideology in the first place. So we got that's kind of a summary of what we talked about yesterday. I talked about my exchange with John, which has only grown. And by the way, this got community noted as well. So John's is just the title of the piece. Fighting against the USSR didn't necessarily make you a Nazi. And again, if you joined the SS, yes, it did. Yes, it did. There's no nuance. You don't need to have this like hem and haw and have this distinction. Like, no, it literally does make you a Nazi if you volunteered with the SS. This says many battalions that fought against the USSR were typically allied with Nazi Germany. Many of them joined on a voluntary basis. Most of these units knowingly participated in and tactically supporting Nazi Germany's policies, such as participating in pogroms and massacres. So thank you to the community notes for that. So here's my exchange. And this is really incredible stuff. This is really incredible stuff. So this is a response that I posted yesterday, which is, again, Cypher, destroyed in the marketplace of ideas, yet again. I'm by this point, based on Twitter exchanges, I'm now John Cypher's father, unfortunately for him. He is my son now. And he's grounded for being not good. He's been misbehaving by being in the CIA. I said if I was part of an organization that sheltered and relocated Nazis after the war, then later recruited and trained them to act as death squads around the world, I would maybe sit this one out. And this is what he says to me. And this is what this guy always does whenever he goes viral and you have a bunch of people talking about, John, you're in the CIA. Like, why are you talking about human rights? Why are you talking about stuff that Russia's doing? You're literally in the CIA. And this is what he always says. Look what he says. And this is an incredible response, honestly, on a number of levels. He says, oh, I guess I should have done something about it, even though it was still another 15 years before I was born. So that's John Cypher of the CIA responding to me about this. And like, there's a couple of things that I find really incredible about that response. Okay. First of all, this is what he always does, saying like, oh yeah, bad stuff happened in the CIA, but that was in the past. That's not when I was there. When I was there, we were the good guys and we weren't doing anything bad. And yeah, oh yeah, don't look up what the CIA was up to during the War on Terror when I was active in the CIA, operating these like black site torture prisons around the world and whatever the fuck, whoever knows what else. I mean, they were leading the whole warrantless drone assassination program under the Obama administration. Don't look into any of that stuff. I mean, that's the thing. The CIA, all the church committee stuff that happened in the 60s and 70s, well, we just don't have anything to do with that anymore. You know, the 80s, the Mujahideen, and, you know, everything, Panama and everything that they've been doing. You know, it was only in the past. It was in the past when these bad things happened. Fortunately, now the CIA is not doing those kinds of things. I guess we learned not to do it again. That's right. We're not into doing that kind of stuff anymore. That's right. Even though we can provably show that they were indeed doing that stuff. But, you know, that's neither here nor there. The crazy shit is they're still helping the Nazis now, which is what the whole point of my tweet was in the first place. But I think the amazing thing about this as well, he says, I guess I should have done something about it, even though it was still another 15 years before I was born. So John in this response is, unless I'm crazy here, John in this response is acknowledging that the CIA did Nazi shit. Like, right? Oh, I couldn't do anything about the Nazi stuff because I wasn't born. But like, okay, so you're saying you worked for an organization that did a bunch of Nazi shit, though. Like we've established that now. We've established that as part of this conversation that's going on. Isn't that amazing? So that happened before you joined the organization. You were aware of it and you joined anyway and did nothing to ever talk about that or talk about the other things that the CIA was up to during that time. Yes, so the CIA did the rat lines, we did Operation Sunrise, we did Operation Paperclip and all that stuff, but like that was before I was there, all right? We helped all those Nazis that you're talking about before I was even there. It's like that's not good, you know? That's not something to be proud of. Like I willingly joined this organization that, as you correctly point out, sheltered and relocated Nazis after the war, and then recruited and trained them to act as death squads around the world. I acknowledge that you're correct about that. And yes, I willingly joined this organization afterwards and never really questioned that legacy or never did anything to steer it in this different direction. He did change from within. That's right. I mean, this is what I think is funny about, like I said, what I think is funny about the future or this kind of technology or social media. It's like you have to have all these church committee hearings and all this stuff to try to acknowledge this history of the CIA doing Nazi shit. And this is like, okay, it's just he's admitting it to some guy on Twitter because he's addicted to posting, or there's some kind of op going on. I don't know. Like I was saying, maybe they're not actually this stupid, but it is pretty amazing that I have a CIA guy on Twitter admitting to me, Twitch streamer and podcast host Rob Rousseau, that yes, the CIA did Nazi shit. Like, are they really on record acknowledging that kind of thing? I don't really think they are as much, but here we go. Now they're on the record. So thank you, John Cipher, for that. John Cipher, the CIA agent. Like, what? This is like one of these things that makes me think that we're living in some kind of simulation. Like, it's just so stupid. Friend of the show, John Cipher, the CIA agent. Pretty amazing stuff. I was just really like, I really found that quite remarkable, this whole exchange. Yes, the CIA did Nazi shit. We're just not doing it anymore. Okay, that was before I got there. Like, if you just worked for an organization, like any organization that was like as you're admitting, is connected to these kinds of like rampant criminality and mass murder, even if they've reformed all those things, like, isn't that still kind of reflecting on you when you go to work for that organization later? Even if that was the case. What would John do to stop the Nazis in the CIA? Well, nothing. That's the whole thing, because the CIA continued its exact strategy. It's an exact geopolitical or foreign policy strategy, like, while John was there. So, joining the Nazis to make it not Nazi. That's right. Changing the Nazis from the inside. That's what we got to do. We got to be nuanced. White hat. War criminal. Anyway, it's just like, that's what I mean. It's just ridiculous. Like, you're saying you joined this organization that you admit was involved in this kind of Nazi shit. This whole idea that the CIA was reformed somehow or stopped doing bad stuff can be easily disproven just by looking at the basic history of the last couple of decades. Like, not even the horror show of the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s, but even just the last like 10, 15 years, in Libya and Syria and Ukraine, who they've been arming and funding, who they've been training, trying to overthrow Venezuela, trying to overthrow Iran, trying to overthrow Cuba. This is just recently. This is recently in the last like 5-10 years. Excuse me. Like, John was literally in the CIA, like I said, when it was operating black site torture prisons in Pakistan and all these other places. This is a broader delusion that liberals partake in. The idea that the functioning of an organization is something that changes with the personnel, and that somehow in the last few decades, the USA became the good guys. Saw the same thing in frantic lib-brained defenses of NATO. Yeah. I mean, not just the CIA, but like the U.S. government in general, right? Oh, the U.S. government is doing bad things because the Orange Man is bad. Once we get our guys in there, then it's going to be good. And then if they ever get back in, then it's bad. While ignoring the ways that, even though there might be subtle differences between the different administrations, and sometimes there are large differences, but overall, there's a continuity. There's a continuity in foreign policy. There's a continuity in economic policy. There's some slight disagreements about like the levels of social spending that maybe are going to happen, or maybe the levels of cruelty. You're going to turn the cruelty knob from a 8 to a 7 versus back to an 8. That's basically the distinction. But overall, there's this same trajectory that's going on in foreign policy and in all these other policies. Now, that's completely independent. This is kind of the Marvel propaganda. This is like the whole point of the MCU movies, that we'll talk about these bad people in the intelligence community, or these bad people in the US government, or bad people in these corporations. And that's what these movies tell you, is that once you just put the competent and good and kind-hearted and generous people in the place of these institutions such as the CIA, then it's going to do good things. It's just there's a few bad people. There's sometimes in these institutions, there's bad people. And you just have to get rid of the bad people that are in there and replace them with good people. And then these institutions become good. Now, that's the fundamentally flawed, very liberal viewpoint of these big institutions. John is using the same argument he's using for Nazi apology, like Hunka was just completely ignorant to the reality of Nazism. Yeah, and you expect us to believe that, number one. But like, even if that's true, that's not something to be proud of. Oh, I was just completely fucking ignorant of this, the history of this organization that I devoted my whole career to. Like, that's not good. That's not a good thing. They just stopped doing bad things as soon as John was born. I see how you're just getting constantly ratioed in every realm. Well, that's you're seeing in all these like declining empire stories, like their pathetic effort to overthrow Maduro in Venezuela just failed miserably. This multi-year-long process just completely fell flat. And now you've got Maduro in Venezuela meeting with President Xi in China and forging these bilateral connections with them. Stop eating with your mouth full? No, I won't. I refuse. It's the only way I know how to eat. I'm a chronic masticator. You know, I'm not totally sure what kind of apple it is. It was my son picked it. He went apple picking at his school the other day. Getting older is painful because you do see how stuff that was once subtle 1 minute is made overt and literal the next. This is where people get their wrong idiocracy ideas from. They see it as relating to human nature, not capitalism going feral. Yeah, it's alarming. It's alarming to see these processes playing out. Our body needs his nutrients to continue beefing with Mr. Cipher of the CIA. John Cipher. Like, he might as well be called, like, John Secret Agent. Like, it's so stupid. I don't know if he is real. That's what I mean. Like, maybe I am being opt. Maybe they're not this stupid. I don't know. Like, you're either ignorant of the history or like you just don't know, or like, I just really don't know. John coup d'etat. Yeah, real incognito. It's like they're like, John, you need to come up with a civilian name. Don't do anything that sounds suspicious. We need it right now that you were late on this. We just spit something out. John Cipher. They're like, ugh. You know? Anyway, excuse me. Really incredible exchange. A lot of people dunking on Mr. Cipher here. I like this. Like, I could have just gone into like a back and forth or talked about more like things that this, what if the CIA did this and this and this and this, but it's just like, this is what this reply was about though. It's just like, I don't even want to, like, I know you know about this stuff. You must know about this history. You must know, you know, I'm not going to play this game where I go back and forth and go, oh no, you did this and this and this, and try and pin him down. It's just like, John, come on. It's the Maduro expression. That's what I was trying to do with this response. John, come on, sir. Come on, man. John S. Agent. Yeah. John, you know this. Yeah, thank you for the tacit admission that the CIA protected, transported, and trained Nazis all over the world after World War II. At least we're making progress somewhere. That's what I mean, is like, they haven't really admitted to that, but it kind of seems like John is like admitting to it. This should be news. If anyone ever doubted the CIA's role in doing this Nazi shit, like if I point this kind of stuff out and be like, what are you saying, this Russian propaganda? What are you saying, we armed and trained Nazis? That's not true. That's not true. It's like they're literally saying, he's admitting that it is true. He said it. It is our duty to be ignorant about geopolitical and historical context. Yeah, and you know what? I get that a lot of people in our society are like that. I understand that, like, especially like, you know, most people that have this like complete allergy to like learning anything about recent history or even acknowledging recent history. Like, as we've seen with the Ukraine thing, all the recent history has just been like completely erased. And people just who should know, or even people that do know, journalists that have been talking about Ukraine and NATO arming Ukrainians and the CIA arming Ukrainians, and these fascist militias. Even people that know this, they just forget it as soon as that knowledge becomes like inconvenient. I get that a lot of people in our society are like that, but like, you would think that our CIA guys are at least aware of the history, you know? They're at least aware of these basic facts. Come on, Fat. That was one of the funniest things that Biden has ever done. He was about to call that guy fat ass and just stopped himself. Listen, Fat. What crimes has the CIA committed when you were in the CIA? Did he do something about? And yeah, you're doing Nazi apology now, and that's what it comes back to. It's like, so I say you joined an organization that sheltered and relocated Nazis after the war, then recruited and trained them to act in death squads around the world. And John, who doesn't deny this, and says, well, I should have done something about that, but it was another 15 years before I was born. But you know how I know that John Cipher of the Central Intelligence Agency wouldn't have actually done anything about that, as he claims that I guess he would have had he known? You know how I know he wouldn't? It's because here's John Cipher in 2023 this is the post that I'm responding to in the first place, engaging in Nazi apologia of the fucking SS, who CIA founder Alan Dulles protected numerous high-ranking people in the SS as part of Operation Sunrise near the end of the war, and conscripted them into his vast intelligence apparatus that he was kind of creating. So that's how I know, though, that John Cipher would not actually do anything about the Nazi shit, which he admits that the CIA was involved in, is that here he is all those years later in October 2nd, 2023, engaging in revisionism and open Nazi apologia for literally the SS. So that's how I know that I think John Cipher would not actually do anything about this. You know, how silly, though. How preposterous. Not Nazis. They were simply the SS. No. Don't worry. They had no choice. They had no choice but to join the SS. They were so scared. They were just scared little guys because of Stalin. Stalin was just scaring these poor little guys so much that they had to join the SS. I almost said the CIA, but I repeat myself. You know? Pretty silly. I had to choose to volunteer for the SS, which happened to be the happiest years of my life. That's right. I want to relook at this, like, TRRS needs a gun emoji. I should, yeah. It would be good to have, like, the pointing gun, like the one that's pointed at the screen, because then you can pair that with faces and other emotes. Did you know that SS originally stood for Stalin Slayers? Well, no wonder these people like him so much. Yeah, that's the gun emote. That's good. Who can forget? Getting whiplash from how quick Libs went from eating dinner with Nazis makes you a Nazi to, oh, so now being in the SS makes you a Nazi. It's amazing, isn't it? And like that's what I pointed out in this tweet here, not to just like look at my fucking tweets all day. Not that exciting, but this post ended up at 588 replies to the Soviet Union was good. Actually, I'm sure it would be entertaining to just go through the quote tweets of that, but I just don't. I never bothered. I muted it after it got about like 300 likes, and I just watched with bemusement. I watched with bemusement while the comments just steadily grew in the quote tweets. I'm sure if you want to laugh at some takes, though, I'm sure you can search through the quote tweets for that one and see all kinds of interesting stuff. Yeah, but it's these people, right? Punch every Nazi you see. The punch every Nazi you see people are now like making excuses for literally the SS. I'm as left as they come, but I draw the line at supporting the socialist states. That's right. No, it wasn't real socialism, you see. It wasn't real socialism. I know what real socialism is. Me, random guy from fucking Kansas or wherever it is. If only the USSR had asked me, if only Stalin had asked me, I would have been able to tell him, no, sir. No, sir. You're not doing it properly. No, Mao. You're not doing it properly, all right? Listen to me. Random white guy, random American or Canadian. Listen to me about socialism and what it means and what you have to do to get it. That's the thing, that's the cursed timeline that we're in. We're gonna eventually, we'll somehow, despite all the obstacles and contradictions, we'll have some kind of socialist revolution, and it's gonna be led by some like bread tuber who then immediately abolishes the state and abolishes the police and the armed forces because states are bad. It says in the book, in the communism book, that we don't want a state, so no more states, and it just immediately just get completely washed. Immediately, next day, the planes come in, just bomb everything, and it's like, oh shit! I guess we may have needed some of that stuff. You know. Like I think about in the USSR, Stalin moving the entire industrial base and creating this this new industrial base to create this war machine, in a way that was protected, in an area that was protected because they knew that they were going to need it. And that's the big contradiction that these people don't want to talk about. Was that process fun for workers that were involved in that? Absolutely not. Did he just say well, this is socialism, so you control the means of production? Can you please build these factories here in the next 10 years? And they would say, no, we don't want to. We don't want to freeze to death in the middle of winter building these factories to create a manufacturing base to manufacture a war machine that can defend it. We don't want to do that. We all voted democratically to say no, we'd rather not do that, which is a fair thing to say. I wouldn't want to do it either, but this is the big contradiction. What happens then? Well, they get completely wiped out in the next decade. They get completely wiped out. After the bombing, we really don't have a state. Yeah, we win. We got what we wanted finally. We don't have shit. We have this big country of hundreds of millions of people. Some people aren't getting enough food, and then other people are saying well, we want, and we're trying to ask them nicely to share with everyone else. But because we don't have a state, we don't have any centralized planned economy or ways to levy taxes and then use that to feed everyone or get services to everyone. We're just relying on everyone to kind of do the right thing, and they're not doing it. What the hell? What's going on? Maybe eventually it'll just sort itself out. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like a good way of organizing society, if you ask me. Yeah, you need it when there are nuclear-armed capitalist nation-states around trying to overthrow you from moment one. Why was this secret police there? First of all, we have secret police here. So the idea that was exclusive to the Soviet Union. Why did they have the secret police? Why were they doing this? Why were there purges? Why did all these old Bolsheviks get purged? It's they're trying to kill you from moment one. They're trying to destroy everything that you've built. And lo and behold, that leads to this sense of defensiveness. It leads to this sense of paranoia. It's not paranoia based on nothing. It's paranoia based on documented real phenomena and real incidents and things that were happening where you can clearly point to the fact that their society was under attack from day one. Because we've talked about the Russian Revolution. There was powerful people in the West that had millions tied up
to mark up the
in the
size of the
czarist
account.
system.
We can defeat
And
our
they lost.
capitalists. We can build socialism and we can make it happen. But that does not mean that we can guarantee the country of the dictatorship of the proletariat against dangers from outside, against the dangers of intervention and the associated restoration of the old orders.
We don't live on an island. We live in a capitalist environment. That's really good. That's a good quote. Gald Greek. That's another funny thing about Stalin as well. People say he's just this raving madman. He's this raving madman. You know, just a genocidal madman, just mustache twirling like movie, ha 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 ha, just like at the wave of his hand, wiping out 20 million people or whatever it is. And you can actually just look into the things that he was saying at that time and talking about in writing. You know, he's actually like a much better writer and thinker than people give him credit, because it's so not encouraged, so discouraged in our society to ever investigate this at all. You know, to ever read anything or to even acknowledge that he contributed to this kind of thing. Like, if you wanted to know what he was thinking, he was pretty clear about that. As the liberals, their orcish culture, it started with Stalin, it continues with Putler, exactly. Which is funny because they also think that the Tsar was good. They think the Romanovs were good, but apparently that wasn't part of the culture. Yeah, exactly. I got them my calipers, and it's just they're just natural tendency towards bloodlust and violence and conquest. That's all. That's all it is. Pay no attention to the history of the country that I live in, by the way. Pay no attention to the country that I actually live in and the history of there, or what was going on with that. Let's not look into any of that and make any arguments about whether we in fact have this drive towards conquest and murder and enslavement. Yeah, we love monarchs and empires, but when someone comes along that tries to destroy that monarchical system, they try to destroy feudalism, they try to destroy the Western imperialist empire, and we call them authoritarian, and we call them an empire, the evil empire. Here's the next thing that I wanted to look at. Some dumbass that I just learned existed. There's this whole universe of people that are connected to this anarcho-lib streaming world that I just keep learning about against my will. It's very upsetting. A new speaker just dropped. I hate this fucking. Before we look at this tradition is so stupid. This is one of my least favorite things about Canadian politics is when they elect a new speaker, they do this bullshit fratty thing where the prime minister and the leader of the opposition, they go and drag him there, force him to do it. And they're all smiling and laughing, have a good time. It's so annoying. Yeah, fuck you, Stu. Thank you for the clip, but god damn it. No sound on this, I guess. Look at Trudeau's face. He does this annoying face. He juts his chin out. This. Trudeau does this when he wants to look tough for something. This kind of breaks the whole kayfabe too. Poilievre's been trying to do this thing where he's this big adversary for Trudeau, and he's not part of the system, and he's trying to. He's going to be calling Fergus something like a lib groomer, any day now. But now he has to. The whole drops that whole facade and acknowledges that he's part of this.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Elite circle. Thank you, Gold Greek, for the 100 friend coin. Looks like such a big morning on the Molly. It's true. It is. Maybe that cocaine plane, is there something to that? Maybe that's why. He's like grinding his teeth. Yeah, stimulant, Joe. That's it. Maybe he's on the juice, the gas. I nominate the two Michaels. I think we could have co-speakers. We should have both the Michaels as speakers. We don't hear much about those two Michaels anymore. Isn't that interesting that they became these big national figures while being held in China, and then since then, no books, no interviews, no real interest in like what's going on with them. They haven't talked much to anybody about, as far as I know, their ordeal, imprisonment. Isn't that kind of interesting? It's like, yeah, they're back now. Let's get them out of here so we don't ask any questions about like what they were actually up to. We don't appreciate our Michaels. I thought if we cared about these guys, we'd be wanting to talk to them. We'd be wanting to hear what they have to say. Yeah, and they're just trying to paper over the Nazi thing. They're all trying to move on from it. We're never going to let them forget, though. That picture, I made sure to save it to my phone. That picture of Zelensky going like this, and Freeland, and Trudeau, and everyone clapping. It's just iconic. It's just absolutely iconic. I'm never going to let them get over that. I'm never going to let them forget about that. Not a day goes by when I don't think about the precious Michaels, and that's good. He's wearing the hat. What is this? What is this stuff you're torturing me with right now?
Admit the messenger.
Wow. People try to tell us this is a real country. Yeah, right.
Do I do anything here?
People try to look at this shit. What is this? Why do we have sacred objects? Give me a fucking break. We're supposed to... Oh, yeah, this is a real country. No, this makes sense. This is good. Oh, we got more sacred objects. I haven't seen this many sacred objects since the coronation of King Charles. Bring out the sacred objects in this very real country, this very real nation and culture. Why do we have an unelected Senate? It's a great question.
Mr. Speaker, it is the pleasure of Her
Why are you wearing that
Excellency
hat?
the Governor General that this honorable House immediately attend the Senate chamber.
The pleasure of Her Excellency the Governor General that this honorable House attend her immediately in the chamber of the Senate.
This honorable House that was applauding an SS guy, that wasn't honorable. That is gone. No, you can't pretend to be an honorable House anymore after that. That was like a week ago. That's right, I'm doing a new Baldur's Gate playthrough. That's right, Marty. This is not a real country, I'm sorry. It's a real country. He's just being summoned to the unelected Senate by the unelected guy with a big magic stick. Yeah, no, this is good. This is all totally normal and cool, actually. How, genuinely, how do people look at this and say, like, yep, yeah, that looks, doesn't look like anything to me, you know? How? How do you look at this and be like, no, this is a system that makes sense. This is a system that makes sense. I like this. Election of the Speaker of the House of Commons. The Speaker makes their way to the Senate chamber to present themselves and to receive the Governor General's acknowledgement. Good Lord. The Parliament has been cleansed. All squeaky clean now, no worried. Back to funding Ukraine. It's like a religious thing, isn't it? You're purged of sin. You've been purged of sin now. You're ready to go. Reset the 0 days since Nazi incident. Anyway, I gotta look at this take. We talked about Hassan and Tibet and that and all that. Yeah, yesterday, and again, I keep finding these accounts. Moderator for Vosh V and others, progressive. And we looked at Hassan's like objectively correct take yesterday, and the backlash to that from people that just like think that it's good actually for Tibetans to still be slaves. You know, and all that, and people that don't have any understanding of the actual situation, or if they have an understanding of it, it's completely informed by like the Beastie Boys and Richard Gere and a Brad Pitt movie. You know, that's their entire understanding, and they see Hassan say something correct, which goes against this like this understanding that they have, this deep knowledge, this certainty that they have about certain events that have transpired. This imperialist or colonialist occupation of the Han occupation of Tibet, where they're destroying their culture and they're destroying their religion, and they want to turn everyone into this homogenous. They want to just, you know, they want to commit this kind of cultural genocide and create this homogenous culture. People know this. They just know this, and they see Hassan saying something like this, and it's very upsetting to them. Why do they know this? Like, yeah, because of the Beastie Boys and Rage Against the Machine and Richard Gere and whatever the fuck else, and Brad Pitt and whatever else. That's how they know. That's how they know. Or they know because of like official NGO dissident groups that are funded by, you know, the state and the arms manufacturing industry. That's how there's all kinds of, we just got to listen to the Tibetans. Just listen, Rob, it's not me. Just listen to the Tibetans. You know, listen to what they're saying. And they go, and it's like the Ned sponsored like global Tibetan dissident network or whatever. Like those are the people that are telling us. And once again, folks, we can talk about this without you can acknowledge that there's still problems and bad things that happen. No one is ever fetishizing or whitewashing things. But it's just, as I said, it's just, when you talked about this yesterday, it's a very, very simple equation of just asking yourself, for the average person, did life get better or worse following this socialist revolution that took place, which, as I keep pointing out, was being led by Tibetan people? It's not this Han Chinese. People try to do this Han supremacy thing or this Han Chinese thing to make this equation between Han people and white people, and to say that that's what China's doing when they go into Xinjiang, when they go into Hong Kong, when they want to go into Taiwan, when they go into Tibet or Mongolia or whatever. They're doing this like they're doing what we did. They're doing what our ancestors did, and we're just so brave that we're able to call that out. Right? That's what they say. And they use the Han thing as a way to kind of like make this connection in people's minds. That there's this similarity between white supremacy and Han supremacy. There's this similarity between Western colonialism and the Chinese Revolution. Isn't it interesting how Vosh, Destiny, and Keffels, Wu, etc. are the ones invited to talk with the careerist and phony progressives Ro Khanna, but it's local genuine DSA people who invite Hassan to things, kind of revealing. It is revealing. Although I did talk to Ro Khanna as well, but I'm one of the good ones though. So it wasn't bad when I did it, but I see what your point is. I see your point. Anyway, I just saw this brain dead take from this. I don't know who this person is. You know, I don't know. From one of these Vosh people, part of the Vosh network. No, so I mentioned I'm beefing with the Central Intelligence Agency. don't feel the need to change the title when I go into this kind of segment. I talked to Rokan a couple weeks ago on the Insurgents podcast, or a couple months ago now, I guess. And this is the take, and I just couldn't believe this. How many 2,000 likes on this? Hassan with the standard... let's try and unpack this. Hassan with the standard tanky racism, where you treat East Asians like some magical race of superhumans who aren't doing the exact same imperialism we do in the West. He just wants the US with a communist flag on it. First of all, the idea that you're treating East Asians like who aren't doing the same imperialism, we like everyone that knows anything about this history acknowledges like Japanese imperialism and colonialism and the brutal violence that Japanese people were visiting on people in China and Korea and Vietnam and around the world. So in and of itself, that's just not an accurate framing of anything, suggesting that East Asians are not capable of that. But then that's the contradiction. It's like, it's on the flip side of that coin, on the flip side of that argument, there's this need among people that live in the West, who live in societies that exist because of settler colonialism, who have benefited from this kind of imperialism. There's this need to make this equivalence with China or other nations, or to suggest that other cultures are always have the same intentions that we do. There's nothing specific about us or about Western colonialism. Every other culture around the world, no matter what the ideology is, no matter what the culture is, they all have the same intentions. So there is no way when you say that like China had interests in Tibet that involved overthrowing this extremely regressive and violent and brutal and feudalistic, religious, supremacist social order, this slave state, and replacing it with something that's more equitable. There's always like, no, there's no way you can suggest that, or there's suggest that it's racist to not acknowledge that that's the exact same thing. And again, as we've talked about, like there was someone in my mentions saying, oh yeah, I guess you think Belgian colonialism was great, which is psychotic. That's a psychotic thing to say. And that's the basic question. They aren't doing the exact same imperialism that we do in the West. Again, apply that same theory. You know what a good example I think is India and the British Raj and the East India Company in India, and how, yes, that was this common, or the settling of North America and the genocide of indigenous peoples. That was one of these excuses. We're overthrowing their like barbaric social order. And there were, for example, like when you talk about Britain and India, there were certain things that they did, such as banning I think it's called the seti, which was this horrible ritual where women were burned alive when their husbands died. So the British banned this process, and this kind of thing was used to justify the exploitation that was happening. It was used to justify the tremendous violence of colonialism. And there were these kind of like British imperialist liberal thinkers that had this high-minded idea of colonialism and white man's burden and civilizing these people in India or in North America or South America or wherever. So you could maybe point to that as an example, but that's the question you have to ask, though. Like, and this is the question that we want to ask, that we were asking yesterday. First of all, I would like to see someone actually explain how Hassan is wrong in his assessment of this Tibetan society and the violence that was inherent to that, the slavery. No one seems to want to address that, but we just have to, like, so they're implicitly agreeing that that's true, but just suggesting that that's not an excuse or justification for China to play this role in overthrowing this social order and installing it with something that's more equitable. Yeah, the British ending slavery. I mean, that's the kind of thing that they say, or even liberals and abolitionists in the U.S. and Canada. I show that same video of how Tibetan society was before the PRC ended the theocratic slave state and clapped back with, and the British ended slavery in Africa. What an insane comparison. That's the basic question you have to ask, right? You look at Tibet, this like feudalistic, theocratic slave society. For the average person, like we're talking about yesterday, did life get better or worse following this intervention? And you can look at, there's fundamental ways to figure this out. You look at life expectancy, literacy, infrastructure, development, all these things. So when this society was abolished and the serf society was abolished and the Lama owned power structure and land ownership was abolished, this kind of land reform and cultural reform led by, again, Tibetan people were deeply, deeply involved in that. Did life for the average person get better or did it get worse? There's a number of ways we can figure this out, but the answer is that it got better for most people, not the lamas, not the landowning class. For everyone else though, life improved. Let's look at India. This is the question. Are these human rights issues just an excuse to justify annexation and exploitation? Is Tibet being exploited by China? I would like for someone to point out, if you're going to make that kind of comparison, let's say with India, as the example that I used, you can see the exploitation that was taking place. And you can see the things like literacy. Like India, literacy went down during the centuries of colonialism. There was this vast transfer of wealth from the Indian people. Even if there were these minor cultural changes that the British made to justify this kind of thing, there's this massive exchange of wealth and resources going from the people of India to the ruling class in Britain. And you can count that. Like you can see the numbers, like you can see the ways that people's lives were being, their quality of life was being decreased through this process rather than increased. This vast exploitation of resources that's taking place. Or in the Congo, was colonialism, and that comparison is just ludicrous to me, but like, did the lives of the average person in the Congo get better or worse because of Belgian colonialism? Obviously worse. Obviously worse. And that I don't even think they were using some barbaric cultural practices excuse, considering the barbarism that the Belgians inflicted on people in the Congo. So this is what I mean. These are not abstract concepts. You can actually look at the numbers and the statistics, and you can measure people's quality of life and whether it's improving or not improving. And you can also point out when there's this vast exploitation that's happening. And like we saw with India, like we saw with so many victims of colonialism in Africa, as we've discussed a lot, was intentionally underdeveloped, as Walter Rodney tells us, right? It's intentionally underdeveloped. Or as Parenti talks about, it's overexploited. It's not underdeveloped, it's overexploited. Let's look at Tibet as an example. Has there been development? Has there been development since the intervention of the PRC in Tibet? Yes. There's been huge, massive historic infrastructure projects built, such as the rail system that goes through the fucking Himalayas. Unless I'm messing up my geography, but you know what I mean. There's been development. There's been a vast increase in people's standards of living. These are not abstract concepts. If East Asians, as this person's pointing out, were doing the same thing, the same kind of imperialism that we do in the West, that's the claim, right? Hassan is being racist because he's suggesting
you can count on me.
These folks,
good old Rob, to talk you through all this.
Thanks, Rob, but I'll take my geopolitics lesson from Hollywood.
Thank you, Max, for the 16 months of Prime. Thank you for that. But that's the claim, right? Hassan is being racist because he's suggesting that China is just they're somehow genetically incapable of doing the exact same imperialism we do in the West. So that's the claim, that China in Tibet is doing the exact same imperialism. That's their words, the exact same imperialism. There's ways to measure that, though. This is not an abstract thing. If they were doing the same imperialism as we do in the West, would Tibet have developed since that time? No, because we don't develop. We don't develop the victims of colonialism and the nations and the peoples that we're exploiting. We deliberately underdevelop them. That is the difference. That's why these fucking people will say the same thing about the Belt and Road Initiative in general, not just about Tibet, but about anywhere that China is operating now, in Africa or wherever else, building these infrastructure projects. How can you say they're not just doing the exact same development, the exact same imperialism that we're doing? It's just Chinese imperialism or colonialism, and because you're a tanky, you just deny that they're doing the exact same thing. If they were doing the exact same thing, we would be able to see. Would these places be developing? Would China be building these ports and power plants and schools and rail and roads and infrastructure? No, because as we saw with Western colonialism in Africa, there's centuries of this history to look at where none of this shit happened. So again, I keep saying this, but it's not some abstract concept. It's not some abstract concept. You can see real, tangible, physical differences between these two things. As you can see with both Tibet and anywhere China is operating with this Belt and Road Initiative, there's actual development that's happening. And the exact same imperialism we do in the West, like the residential school system, which people compare the Xinjiang policies and they compare the Tibetan policies to the residential school system. They're doing the exact same thing. They're just stamping out their culture. They're doing this Han supremacy. They're homogenizing. That's what Tibet expert Ethan Klein was saying on the podcast we were looking at yesterday. They're homogenizing. They're stamping out the culture. Again, this is not. We can see. You can literally travel to Xinjiang and see all the mosques. You can go to Tibet and see the temples and see the fact that people are still able to speak their language. Like in China, there's massive movie stars and people that are Uyghur people who speak Uyghur language. There's Uyghur language television stations. Are there a lot of, indigenous language, whether it's Mi'kmaq or Wet'suwet'en or whatever nation we're talking about? Is there like media and television stations using that language and promoting that culture here? No, there's not. There is in China. As we've talked about also, people point out these images of schools in Tibet, of Tibetan kids in schools who, are also learning Chinese, and you can see the Tibetan written on the walls. Like the language is still there. The culture is still there. But they do say, if you're going to take that culture and try to implement a slave society, well, we're not going to let you do that. If you're going to take that culture and you're going to promote religious extremism and radicalism and terrorism where people start dying, we're not going to let you do that. That's the difference. But this is my point. If they were doing the exact same imperialism, whether we're talking about any of these places in Tibet or Xinjiang or wherever in Africa or Latin America or wherever that China is engaging in this kind of policy of development, if it was the exact same, we would see the exploitation. We would see the deliberate underdevelopment. We're not seeing that. The reason that we're not seeing that is because it's not the exact same. It's actually two completely different things. And when you suggest that what they're engaging in is the exact same thing, you're actually whitewashing the horrific violence and exploitation of the legacy of colonialism that built our society. You're whitewashing that by suggesting that there's some similarity. There isn't a similarity. They do Hockey Night in Canada and Cree. I know there has been more of I will say that there's been more of an effort in Canada, especially to promote Indigenous language But this is a new phenomenon, though. This is a fairly recent phenomenon, I would say. And this is being done because of a lot of the criticism and a lot of the horrific news stories about the violence of our past and the genocide, both in terms of cultural genocide and ethnic cleansing that we were a part of and that we benefited from. So I will cop to the fact that there is more of an effort now in Canada to promote that, but I don't think it's anywhere near the same level, like at all. Oh, I was being facetious. China has dedicated news in other languages. Canada has hockey in one Indigenous language. I think you can say that there's more of an effort being made to promote Indigenous language, like through our state broadcaster. But yeah, like you're pointing out, it's still not really a comparison. It still pales in comparison to the effort that's being taken. Not to say that everything's perfect, but there still pales in comparison compared to the effort that's being taken to preserve traditional cultures and to promote these kinds of different and protect these kinds of different ethnic groups than there is here. I don't think there's any comparison whatsoever. So that's why this take is just beyond stupid, and it's so frustrating to me that, you know, these are the kind of people.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Barbara, thank you for another gifted sub. Thank you, Barbara. Very much appreciated. It's frustrating to me that these are the kind of people that are developing these kind of platforms. Again, it's not about this Thaina person. I'm not sure. I don't know anything about them, but they're a Vosh moderator. And it's beyond frustrating for me to see that these are the people that have the sway, like among young people, and that are building these big platforms online. You know, I think that's fucking gross. And like I was joking about this the other day. People say like, oh, Rob, you're just being jealous. You're just being jealous. And you know what? Yeah, I'm jealous. Yeah, okay. It should be me. All right? It should be me. I admit to it. I think it fucking sucks that these are the people that are developing these big platforms that are earning really, really good livings from doing this and promoting viewpoints, which ultimately are just kind of doing this kind of mental gymnastics to justify more imperialist aggression on our part. You know? Like I've talked about, these are the same people that say like, oh, I'm a socialist and you can't support China because China has used capitalism. China has used the capitalist mode of production, and they just call it Chinese with socialist or socialism with Chinese characteristics, and they have a nice little chuckle at that. I'm a real socialist because I would never support a country that uses capitalism like this. Meanwhile, they're all like Biden bros. They're just trying to build support for Joe Biden and the Democratic Party in the United States of America, the capitalist country of the United States of America, and they just want to have healthcare, and they want to have maybe more equity and equitability for some certain marginalized groups in our capitalist imperialist system, which they support and defend. So yeah, it should be me. It should be me. I'm not shy about saying that. But that's my point with these kind of stances. Oh, they're just doing the same kind of colonialism we are, and Hassan and other tankies are just racist because they think that the people aren't capable of doing the exact same imperialism we do in the West. It's very easy to compare these two things and ask ourselves whether it is the, quote, exact same. And it's very easy when you compare these two historical processes, compare them, and you'll see that they're not the exact same. It's actually not that complicated. You know, like it's like I talked about this with Danny Haifong a year and a half ago or whenever it was. But that was always something that I thought was really interesting when he talked about visiting that region, like Urumqi and the Xinjiang region. When you ask most people from any ethnic group that live in that region, Has your life improved over the last 20 years, or has it gotten worse? Most people are going to say it's gotten much better because there's been this huge influx of capital and development. Huge construction projects and transit and these incredible changes that have happened. You know, most people, most ethnic groups are going to be like, my life is like drastically improved from that. Go ask victims of colonialism in Congo or in Canada or Central and South America, or anyone that's been a victim of this, or India, or anyone that's been a victim of Western style colonialism. Has your life improved or not improved during that time? And see what they say. It's improved for a certain like class, an upper class of people in these places that have benefited from and profited from this situation. For the average person, though, no, their lives haven't gotten better. It's amazing getting into back and forth with a ton of these libs online, and then you bring up stuff like the global south and their brains completely break. Well, that to me is always the big thing about Russia and Ukraine, right? People say, like, you're doing Russian propaganda. You don't care about Ukraine. You want Ukrainians to die, even though I'm advocating for people to not die. I'm advocating for the opposite of that. And these people that are like, of course, we need to support the global south. I used Lula as an example the other day, right? Lula is so good. Lula was elected. Lula replaced Bolsonaro. I'm a big Lula fan. And then look what people in the global south, including Lula, are saying about Russia and Ukraine. And they're at the very least, they're neutral on it. And to a person, they acknowledge that it was provoked by NATO and by NATO expansion and by NATO's activities in eastern Ukraine. So it's like when I'm taking this stance about Ukraine, it doesn't mean that I'm standing with Putin or that I think Putin is great. It means that I'm standing alongside the vast majority of the population in the world who aren't part of the rules-based international order that acknowledges this basic reality about how the war started and how it needs to end. The moment you bring up exploitation of the global south or what we still do to indigenous people today, the lib to fascist switches in their brain. Yeah, or against like people of color. And they're like, oh yeah, I support Black Lives Matter, but not these black nationalists who are just as bad as the KKK. You know? That's when their inner Hitler particles start to glow. Or talking about giving land back to indigenous people. Whoa. That's not... I care so much about the colonized Tibetans, and I want them to have their own state. I want them to have their own ethno-state where they can bring back all these cultural practices. I want East Turkestan to have its own ethno-state because the Ned-sponsored like East Turkestan Congress told me that that's what they want. But if you ask indigenous people in the country where I live... should they get their land back? Whoa. Let's not get too crazy here. I support land back when it comes to the Tibetan Lama system. I support land back when it comes to radical religious extremists in Xinjiang or in Syria or Libya or any other place. When we talk about land back with indigenous people in the country where I live, whoa. Let's not get too crazy here. Whoa. Like, that really should say it all right there, right? I only want land back when it comes to the getting the Tibetan lamas back, their slaves back, and their slave state back. And that's as they accuse China of doing the same colonialism and imperialism that we did. They don't actually acknowledge our own imperialism because ultimately they don't believe in reparations. They don't believe in land reform or any of these things against these cultures where we carried out this kind of process of imperialism and colonialism. They only seem to want that when it comes to America's official enemies. We need to balkanize Russia. We need to balkanize China. Do we need to balkanize America? Of course not. No. We need to go and support Joe Biden in the coming election. That pretty much says it all right there, right? Yeah, that's the one time that they support land back. That's right. Before I go, I think it's a good time to, because I'm sorry, I got a smaller amount of time today. Our friend Benjamin Norton, friend of the stream, just moved to China. I'm kind of jealous. Benjamin Norton just moved to China, so let's watch his clip on that. I got another half an hour. And folks, I'm at 4 out of 35 subs. I know it's a shorter day. That's on me. I screwed up this morning. That's on me. I got to start the show at a normal time. I accept that. I acknowledge that. If you can, though, please support this program. Please support TRRS. I'm feuding with the Central Intelligence Agency. I'm sure I'm in a file somewhere because of this stuff, which is done for your amusement and your enjoyment, okay? I'm putting my livelihood on the line for you folks, for your education, for your enjoyment, for your amusement. If you can, please subscribe to TRRS. Every little bit helps. As you know, I must make the little number go up every single day. There's no reprieve. As much as I would like a reprieve from my Sisyphean task of constantly rolling this boulder up the hill and then letting it roll back down the next day, I can't. This is not an option for me. The only way that I'm able to do this program every single day, folks, is if the little number goes up. I wish it weren't so. Okay? I wish it weren't so. But it is. So if you can, please support TRRS. I really appreciate it. Help me make the little number go up. And then we become friends afterwards. We become friends. I just joined what I missed. I just talked about my beef with the Central Intelligence Agency. That's all. I'm beefing with the Central Intelligence Agency right now. Oh man, I forgot to do my whole segment. I got a whole intro. I forgot. Hold on. Ever save? There's like a whole sound file. Just one sec. Were you beefing with John Cipher again? Yes, I was. Okay. Sorry. This concludes my segment on. This has been the latest beef update. This concludes my segment and the beef update on my beef with the Central Intelligence Agency.
So they can produce peppers, or we'll suppose they can produce beef. Beef, 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 beef. The opportunity cost of beef, 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 beef. The value of beef, 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 beef. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Beef, 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 beef. To get one more beef, 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 beef. Beef, 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 and we're measuring the sacrifice of beef, 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 and therefore I get one beef, 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 nothing but beef, 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 beef. There's more beef in the world. Beef, 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 beef. Beef, 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 beef. The relative price of beef. Beef, 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 beef.
You can count on me.
Beef, 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 and put them into beef, beef, beef.
Okay.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
And we move on now to a story that might make you smile.
No, that's not what we're doing.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I swear I heard 3 alerts there. Very strange. Comrade Bushy, thank you for the gifted sub and for all the support. And thank you, Diego, for the gifted sub as well. And for all the support. Thank you to you both. Thank you for that. Here's the hot takes that you get on this channel that you don't get elsewhere, all right? Let's watch this clip from our friend. I'm going to have to get Ben back on the show to talk about this.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
The story to make you smile is college professor flunks the entire class. I don't know. I don't know what that story is. To me, is it going to make us smile? I don't know. CC Cirrus, thank you for the gifted sub. Thank you for that. Okay, so I'm going to have to get Ben to come on the show to talk about this. I think this is pretty remarkable. So people say, oh, if you like it so much, why don't you move there? Well, Ben just did move there. Let's hear from him about this.
Hey everyone, I'm Ben Norton, and this is Geopolitical Economy Report. Usually here I analyze the latest geopolitical and economic developments in the world. And I'm going to be doing that today a bit later. But this is a special episode, and today I'm going to be talking about my experience in China. I recently made a huge life change, and I moved to China. I have been living in Beijing for a bit over a month. I have not been here a super long time, but I wanted to make a video reflecting on what I have already learned.
This is the new background. This explains it.
Now, I'm not changing the direction of this channel. I'm going to continue to do the original reporting and analysis on geopolitics and economics that I've always done here, talking about other regions of the world. This is not going to become
I think you just mentioned this for the first time.
Only make videos about my experience in China and the places I visited. There are already several great channels that do that kind of work. I came here because I wanted to actually understand what China is like on the inside, because the only way to really understand a country is to visit it, and in particular to spend time, not just a few days, not even just a few weeks, to spend a few years living in that country. That's my plan. I also plan on doing a PhD in economics, in particular focused on development economics. I want to learn more about China's economic policies, which have been remarkable. I mean, China has overseen the most incredible economic growth in human history. I'll be talking about that today. It has gone from one of the poorest countries on the planet to lifting more than 800 million people out of poverty. In fact, according to World Bank data, China was responsible for 3/4 of all of the world's reduction in extreme poverty since the 1980s.
And capitalists use that to talk about how great capitalism is.
Inequality between countries. You see that
it goes back to another argument we're making, right? China's not socialist, they're capitalist. If they were just capitalist, you would not see this. Just like if they were just doing colonialism and imperialism, you wouldn't see the development of these places. You wouldn't see the infrastructure projects they're not just infrastructure projects designed to facilitate the export of the resources and the exploitation of the people. There's infrastructure, vital infrastructure that people need to live, to improve their lives. If they were just doing colonialism as imperialism, we wouldn't see that. If they were just specifically a capitalist country, you would not see this. This is the proof that when people make this argument, it is completely full of shit.
if you remove China from the data, there is no change. And today, China has the world's largest economy, larger even than the US economy. These are all things that I'm going to be discussing today in further detail. And the first thing that I really want to stress today is I think that China could be the most sovereign country on the planet. Now, I will go into much greater detail later today discussing what I mean by that, but it's really incredible. I mean, when you think about all the propaganda demonizing China as this horrible authoritarian dystopia where the government wants to control everything, what you actually realize is that this is a country that went through a period of partial colonization, the century of humiliation, as it's known, in which numerous foreign powers invaded and even controlled parts of the country, including Japan, including European countries, including the US. Britain and France invaded China in 1860 and burnt down the Summer
Moved to a
Palace.
ghost city,
In fact,
that's right.
you can go visit the Summer Palace here in China and see the ruins of the palace that was burnt down by the European invaders. Then in 1900, China was invaded again by the so-called Eight-Nation Alliance, which included the European powers, the US, and Japan. They occupied the capital, Beijing. That was just over 100 years ago. And in the span of the thousands of years of Chinese history, that was very recent. So these acts of foreign intervention and attacks and the Opium Wars and all of these problems are things that very much are in the historical consciousness here in China that people
How dare they
very much
remember the legacy of violence and
don't want
colonialism.
to repeat. This has all led
You're not
China
allowed
to
to do
create a very unique political and economic model. And by the way, Beijing has no interest whatsoever in imposing that model on other countries.
I wish it had more of an
And
interest in it.
China has
I would like it if they were doing that
prioritized
more.
sovereignty, technological sovereignty, economic sovereignty, food sovereignty. These are all things that China has been able to develop in the past several decades in a way that I think no other country on earth has been able to do. So I'll explain this more in detail later, but here's a very brief summary. If you travel to many countries all across the planet, you see that the technology they use is produced by Western corporations, especially US corporations from Silicon Valley. All of the apps they use are from US companies in Silicon Valley. So whether that's for communications, not only social media and news communication, but also, for instance, email. You know, how many people use Gmail all around the world? These are companies that have close relations with the US government. They are contractors with the US government. Or if you look, for instance, at the actual technology that is produced, like cell phones or computers, a lot of this also comes from US companies, many of which are US government contractors. In China, that's not the case. All of the apps that are used in everyday life.
I just got followed by that account, Total Commie Death. Just recently created account, and I just don't want to fuck around with. Not just gonna let them hang out in this channel. So go away.
Are sovereign Chinese apps. They don't belong to US corporations on Silicon Valley that work with the Pentagon. Much of the physical technology is also Chinese, whether that's the phones are Chinese, the computers are Chinese, even the cars are increasingly Chinese and other forms of transportation.
I actually didn't realize this was this long. For some reason, I thought Ben just posted like a short video about this. I think he maybe posted like a small clip of it online. I'm not going to have a chance to watch this entire video, I'm realizing now, but
They can produce all of that locally. They don't rely on foreign firms, and in particular,
most
US
likely,
corporations that are
most
part
likely
of
a
the
NATO
military
dickhead,
industrial
as you say.
complex. If you travel to many countries on Earth, you can see how dependent they are on Silicon Valley, on the US. But China is not like that. And not only are those technologies produced by Chinese firms, but every part of the supply chain is located physically in China. China can make sure that those parts of the supply chain are not cut off by foreign countries that might want to destabilize it, like we see now with the growing geopolitical tensions between the US and China. This cannot be said for many other countries, including the US, by the way, which is completely dependent on major parts of the supply chain located in other countries, including in China, which has led to discussion of economic decoupling and friendshoring and all of these buzzwords that we hear today in economic discussions. But the point is, the point I really need to stress that I'll be exploring in much greater detail later on, is that China is sovereign in a way that I think no other country is sovereign in. And that's not something we think a lot about. It's not very intuitive, especially if you haven't come here and seen the country with your own eyes. But it is so important. And it also helps us to understand Chinese government policy. And the Western portrayals of China that portray China as trying to control everything and censor everything, when you actually think about it through the lens of sovereignty and trying to defend its national interests against the long history of foreign meddling, you can understand a lot of Chinese policy. China is sovereign in so many ways, not just technologically, not just economically, not just politically. These are all things that I'm going to be exploring today in this analysis. But I also want to talk about why I decided to move here. I think we're in a very tragic and dangerous historical moment in a new Cold War. The United States has
I'm gonna get Ben to come on this program and talk about all this stuff.
Aggressive policies against China. Numerous U.S. government officials have made it clear that they want to overthrow the Chinese government, just as the U.S. was involved in overthrowing the Soviet government in 1991 in Russia. Washington and some European capitals have also imposed sanctions on Chinese companies and government officials and different institutions, and this is all leading in a very dangerous direction. There are many people warning of the possibility of war. In fact, some U.S. generals are openly saying that they're preparing for waging war on China. This is all tragic because it is totally preventable. It is not necessary. I truly believe in the possibility of promoting peaceful cooperation, mutually beneficial development. These are all things that could be on the table if the US largely, but also some European countries, could abandon this very aggressive policy that seeks to try to contain and weaken and destabilize China. So I think in this moment, it is very important to have people who have an English language audience, who are from the West, to come here to China, to see what life is actually like on the ground, to be able to see with your own eyes if the Western media is telling the truth about China. Because this is really the only way of understanding what a country actually is like, is visiting. And I also want to stress, because of course I'm going to be attacked by critics who always like to resort to cheap ad hominem attacks, who claim that I'm a propagandist for China or I'm a shill for China, which is ridiculous. Yes, I am living here now, but I have no links whatsoever to the Chinese government. I'm completely independent. I will stress that I am not working for a Chinese media outlet. I am not getting paid by the Chinese government. I am completely independent as a journalist. Yes, I do plan on doing a PhD, but I mean, studying in a foreign country doesn't make you a tool of that foreign country's government. There are a lot of people
I'll be
who
a
go
shill.
to the United States or go to the UK
I don't mind
to
being
study,
linked.
and I wanted to do a PhD in
I could be-
economics,
I have
and I
no
didn't
issue
want
with
to do
that,
it in a Western
moral
country
or otherwise.
precisely because there is so much bias against countries like China and much of the global South. There still is this very kind
I
of
have no
colonial
problem with that.
perspective.
Respect
Many
to Ben,
programs
but not-
are very
not to me.
dogmatic. Now, I shouldn't have to say any of this. It's ridiculous that I have to give these kinds of disclaimers, but I mentioned that we're in a very toxic environment of a new Cold War, and anyone who criticizes Western narratives about countries like China or Russia or other global South targets, we're often demonized and called propagandists and smeared without any evidence, and you have these ridiculous ad hominem attacks, and it does not help you to understand the world. All that does is encourages xenophobia and tries to get people in the West to close their minds off to the rest of the world, to see China and other foreign countries as these boogeymen that we need to be afraid of, and ultimately the goal, tragically, is about manufacturing consent for more and more aggressive policies that could lead to war. Of course, war could be catastrophic, and that's why it is so important to speak out against this propaganda and to understand what's actually happening. Being here in China, one of the first things that really strikes you, of course, if you're just visiting, but also if you're living here, is the level of development. Now, I really must stress this fact. China's economic development has no parallel in human history. It is absolutely remarkable. In the 1940s,
I've been saying this.
when China still had a feudal system with an emperor, and it was still partially colonized by foreign powers, The average person only lived until their 30s. It depends on the estimates you look at, but between 32 and 35 years. But if you fast forward to today, China's life expectancy is now 78, which is higher than the life expectancy in the United States, which is only 76. And by the way, the US life expectancy is dropping, whereas China's continues to rise. That's not the only incredible indicator. Another example is simply the size of the economy. GDP consists of the goods and services produced in a given economy. Sometimes it obfuscates more than it clarifies, so I do have some criticisms of it that I'll be talking about in a moment. But GDP is the metric most commonly used by economists, and when you look at the US GDP compared to China, China's economy actually overtook the United States in 2018, and China today has the world's largest economy when you measure its GDP at purchasing power parity, which is the best way to measure the size of an economy, because instead of just converting all the prices in the economy to dollars, which would be nominal GDP, which doesn't make sense because in a country like China, you don't use dollars, they have their own currency. And as I'll talk about later, China's a currency, the renminbi, is actually very much undervalued. You can buy a lot with very few yuan compared to dollars. So what that really means is if you only convert it to dollars, you don't actually get a real understanding of the size of the economic power of the Chinese economy. If you measure it in purchasing power parity, you can see that actually it is the world's largest economy and continues to grow. This year, growth estimates are over 5%. And this is despite, all these Western media outlets claiming that the Chinese economy is in a crisis. It continues to grow, certainly much more quickly than the US economy and other Western economies. But the point is, China has the world's largest economy. However, it is true that part of that is because China is such a massive country with more than 1.4 billion people. So it has 4 times the US population of more than 330 million people. In order to adjust for
way
the
more times that than the Canadian population as well.
GDP
We still have to
per
lecture
capita,
them.
which is the measurement of all of the goods and services produced in an economy divided by the population. And there you can see that China still has a lot of room for development compared to the wealthy Western countries like the United States and other European countries, although I should stress that those countries developed through colonialism, hundreds of years of colonialism. The Indian economist Utsa Patnaik has
the exact same
estimated
thing.
that the British
No, it's not.
Empire siphoned out more than $45 trillion of wealth just from India when India was a British colony, not to mention the other colonies of Britain
I've been saying
and the other
this
European
just today.
powers. So that money, that capital that was extracted from the colonies was then used to industrialize and to develop these economies. China did not develop through colonialism. And of course, China itself was a victim of colonialism, not to the same degree as India, but it was partially colonized and invaded and attacked and exploited by numerous foreign colonial powers. So China has really had to catch up economically with development. However, when we do this comparison, once again, it can obfuscate more than it clarifies. A much better comparison is not apples to oranges, but apples to apples. Rather, you should look at China's economic development compared to other countries in the global south that were colonized. So, for instance, India got independence from British colonialism in 1947, which also led to the creation of Pakistan. And China had its revolution in 1949. Overthrowing this feudal regime and ending the century of humiliation. So these global south countries came from similar levels of development in the 1940s, and China has developed significantly more rapidly than the economies of India or Pakistan or other nations. So clearly, they were doing something different. Their economic model was fundamentally different. And even as recently as the 1980s, the per capita GDP, measured at purchasing power parity, of China was lower than the per capita GDP of Haiti, of Honduras, of Sudan. These are some of the poorest countries on earth. So China has gone from one of the poorest countries on earth to today having an economy that is larger than the US economy. How did it do that? Well, I actually have another video in which I talk about China's unique development model of socialism with Chinese characteristics. I will link to that in the description below. I go into much greater detail. But this is where another example of where GDP sometimes obfuscates more than it clarifies. Because if you look at the United States, for instance, a lot of GDP comes from the financial sector. It comes from speculation, pumping up big bubbles with asset price inflation to pump up the value of stocks and bonds and real estate. And this has led to, big crises like the 2008 financial crash because of subprime mortgages and this house of cards that the banking system was built on, or the 2000 dot-com bubble.
That's how you know it's working.
And then if you look at other sectors of the economy, you can see, for instance, that 18% of the GDP comes from healthcare spending. And yet the US spends so much money on healthcare and has some of the worst results out of all of the rich industrialized countries. So just because you spend a lot of money in your economy doesn't mean that you're actually being productive with the use of those resources. And we can see this clearly with deindustrialization in the United States. China has become the factory of the world. China produces everything, as I'll be discussing today. And China today represents nearly 1/3 of global manufacturing production.
Crazy.
Whereas the US represents just over 15%, half of China's industrial production. The US economy has financialized
and how do you get there? You don't get to that point by just pressing the industrialization button, right? We'll simply build factories and become this global manufacturing leader. How did that happen? It happened through, that's a very funny pause face. It happened through the opening up of the Chinese economy. That's a direct result of it. You don't have that historic development that Ben's talking about without those changes in economic policy in the late 70s. You just don't have it.
The U.S. economy has financialized over time under the neoliberal economic model that rose in the 1980s, and this has led to the move toward the service sector, the move away from manufacturing. It has led to deindustrialization in significant parts of the U.S., and this has left behind impoverished areas like the Rust Belt. If you're only fixated on GDP, you can miss the forest for the trees and not see the fundamental
Joe
differences.
One, you're going to fit in here.
The U.S. economic model, which is based on financial speculation, pumping up bubbles of asset price inflation, and the Chinese model, which is fundamentally based on productive investment in manufacturing, in producing things that people all around the world need for their daily lives. And this brings me to the main point that I wanted to stress today, which is the issue of sovereignty.
We looked at the thing on economic development and the introduction there. We're going to have to cut it off. I'd like to watch the rest of this video maybe tomorrow. Again, I had less time to work with, which is on me. I apologize. Oh boy. Oh, excuse me. That's going to do it for me today, folks. I got to go in about 5-10 minutes. Again, I have less time to work with on Tuesdays and Thursdays here. I got to go in about 10 minutes. But folks, we're achingly close right now. We're a mere 28 subs away from hitting the goal today. And that's nothing. Like, that is absolutely nothing. We're right there. We're only 28 subs away from hitting the goal. And again, folks, as I'm forced to remind you, I wish it were not so. But as you know, I had to ride the metro for an hour for no reason. That's right. As you know, folks, the only way I am able to continue to do this program each and every day here on Twitch is if I make the little number at the bottom of the screen go up. We're so close. We're so close to the goal. A mere barely anything at all. A mere 28 subs to go to get to the sub goal. So if you can, folks, please subscribe to TRRS. I got about another 10 10 minutes or so, and then I really got to go. But I know that with this community, we can come together and easily get 28 subs in the next couple of minutes to get to the sub goal. I believe it. I'm glad you got to hang out to the P's. So, folks, if you can, please subscribe to TRRS. I know it's not Slubtember. I know that the discounted slubs are no more. You know, I wish it wasn't the case. I wish it wasn't the case. Am I on, like... And the fucking camera settings always going back. I'm realizing right at the end of the day, the stupid camera settings had resetted this whole time. Very frustrating. Now I'm not blurry. I imagine all the people, Orb Lady doesn't approve of cussing. Okay. I apologize, Orb Lady. I'm sorry. All right, I'm sorry. I apologize. I know it's bad to cuss, and I know some people don't approve, especially Orb Lady, and I apologize. That's on me. Anyway, I imagine all the people rushing to subscribe to the program. That's the reason that the number is still not moved at all or budged. I imagine that any moment now, someone will bail me out from this segment and not having to leave the day, even with my shorter stream. Not having to leave today at the end of the day. A full 28 subs short of the goal. Obviously, that's not the case. I know that, you know, people in the community don't want me to feel bad about myself. So... Rob, it's so good to be inspired me to start streaming myself. And you do a wonderful stream. You do a wonderful stream. County dialectically. AKA Subversive History. Gotta have you back on one of these days, give you the proper entrance you deserve. Well, the funny thing is when you actually tried to deliver that, I fucked up and I just didn't make it. That's on me. Yep. Gotta go any moment now, but I guess I got another 5 minutes or so. Not sure what else I have to do here. Not sure what else I have to do. I think I've tried every psychological manipulation tactic. Not that I do that kind of stuff to people in the community, obviously, but not sure what. I think you know. I don't want to sway suggestively. I don't want to sway suggestively. I do that so much. I did a whole karaoke yesterday. I did a whole Christopher Cross karaoke yesterday. If Brandon forgives my student loans, you'll be the beneficiary. We go back into effect this month, and I have no idea how I will make ends meet. Well, that is completely fair, obviously. That is completely fair. It's actually insane to me that they are doing that. And then they're going to go and ask young people to vote for them in the coming election and say it's the most important election of your lifetimes. I wonder if people are going to believe that. Yes, definitely. Good luck in 2024 with that. That should be great. Also, here's money. Here's unlimited money for Ukraine, by the way. Yeah. By the way, you know who's really bad? The Freedom Caucus. The Freedom Caucus. Shit. Stream just starting over from the beginning. That's right. So still, we've made some progress, and still a mere 28 subs away from the goal. We're making big progress over here. It's gone down to a totally manageable 28 subs, which should be no problem to come in the next 3-4 minutes. I always struggle in these moments.
You can count on
folks.
me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Because people are very, very supportive of me in this channel, and I do not ever want to take that for granted. I hope you understand that I've been audio only. Thought you said you had 28 subs. No, we're 28 subs to go. Now 27. Thanks to Anon. Thank you, Anon. Thank you for the gifted sub, Anon. I really appreciate it. Yeah, never want to take that for granted, folks. The amount of generosity that people have shown me in this channel, I really do appreciate it. I hope I don't come across as being ungrateful just because of it's my job to do this, and I must make the number go up. I must funnel money upwards to Jeff Bezos in order to continue to earn a living and be able to take care of my kid and pay rent and all that stuff. So I hope people don't think that I'm not grateful for the level of support that I get on this program, because I am. It's not forgotten, and I've never stopped appreciating it. But I hope you understand that I must make these pleas to try and make number go up on a daily basis. I hope you all understand this. You criticize capitalism, yet you participate in it. Yeah, well, that's the whole thing, is that I don't own capital.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I don't own any capital. Thank you, Jay, for the gifted sub. I appreciate that. Thank you, Jay. That's kind of you. We're kind of getting there. Do we hear 15? That's doable. That's doable, certainly. Buying slums is capital. Yeah, Sinjal's paying me 50 cents an hour. That's a good deal. That's a good deal. Another 6 to 8 hours of streaming. On to do it. No, I never really get a chance to raid Laura Lux. I like Laura. She sometimes gets people using her image to scam people on Instagram, and then she starts scamming the scammers. So that's what she's doing right now. So I'm gonna raid that. We're gonna raid Laura's channel now. Thanks for watching. You still have about another minute if anyone wants to support this program and get me into the double digits. That's still a possibility. I will come back and try in a regular time tomorrow. Again, I acknowledge that this is a shorter stream, 2.5 hours. It's really not a long time to try and make the number go up to the good number. But I will come back tomorrow for the regular length stream. Try and make up for this. The funny thing about Commander Biden biting everything is it's just biting Secret Service agents. It seems like it's like only biting Secret Service agents.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob
Thank
to
you,
talk you
Barbara.
through all this.
Thank you, Barbara, for the gifted sub. That's very kind of you. I really appreciate all the support lately. Thank you. Until tomorrow, folks, give Laura my regards. Take care.